Yes.
Yes. Penguin, can you turn her up a little?
Okay, cool.
I can try. Let me see. Hold on, I'm in the middle of something. I'm gonna confirm that we're streaming, and then I'll go see if I can do that.
Or maybe,
Yeah,
Rachel, can you
I'm
turn
trying
up?
to get this avatar thing set up, but it's weird.
Okay.
So,
Are
edit
you
mics.
on? Can you turn
I
up
can
the
do this.
volume
Hold
on your
on.
mic?
Well, damn. Okay, let me see. I take her off of automatic adjustment, and then I can manually raise her up.
Oh, okay.
Let's
She just
see.
sounds a little
Okay.
quiet to me. That's all.
Rachel, say something. Just
Hello.
speak. I mean, I just is that better, Sec?
It's about the same. It'll be fine.
Um.
Oh wait, that's
It might
better
be a little
now.
bit better. It should be
Yeah, yeah,
25% better according to this slider.
yeah. No, when she spoke again, it sounded louder. That's good.
Why? Okay, I figured out the avatar thing.
Okay,
All
you
right,
definitely
cool.
do sound louder for sure.
Yeah. All right, well, let's roll right into this. I got a
Let me
hard stop
plug
at
in my.
6:30.
Well, we are technically
Live.
recording, so
Okay.
yeah.
All right, so Penguin here will go into the podcast interview, and then he'll shoot it over to me. I'll introduce you, but I don't really have a bio for you, so I'll just do a quick intro and then let you um, introduce yourself a bit and tell your backstory. And then, are you familiar with our podcast at all, Rachel?
Yeah, I'm going into this blind. I just know you're a libertarian podcast or anarchist podcast.
Yeah. We've been recently doing what we've called the Woman in
Okay.
Anarchism series. So we're just interviewing women anarchists and um, just getting their story and their perspective on things and what have you. So that's basically what we're doing here. All right.
Sounds good.
All right. Very cool. Have you ever done a podcast before?
Yeah, I've been on a couple. I can't remember the. I've been on the Fakertarians podcast a bunch of times. That's how I know what StreamYard is. I've been on Punk Rock Libertarians a couple times, and then there's another one. I can't remember the name of it that I've been on like twice. I think. I just don't remember the name of it. I'd have to check like my YouTube list.
No, fair enough. It's just you're at least familiar with and comfortable with podcasting. That's fine.
All right.
Penguin, you
Let's
ready?
go ahead and do the thing. Yep.
All right, cool.
Okay. Just all right. You both muted? Ready to go? All right, folks. Welcome back to the Agora Podcast. We're back. It's me, Penguin, broadcasting from an undisclosed location here on the East Coast. There was Sec Magora on the homestead. It's your home for agorism, localism, anti-authoritarian concepts, and radical decentralization. We're doing great. We've both been working hard today, but we made time to record another pod. Kind of had a blitz of content come out a couple weeks ago, and since then it's definitely slowed down. Kind of how it rolls with us. You might see a little bit of less of us in the summertime coming up just because of our extreme schedules. So it might become kind of a seasonally variable podcast because we both work in the same industry. But I'm really happy that we're able to continue our Women of Anarchism series. Sec, if you don't have any announcements, like I always say, why don't you go ahead and introduce our guests?
Yep. Today we are bringing on Rachel Blackfire for our Women in Anarchism series. I don't know much about her at all, so I'm kind of going to let her do some talking. Rachel, welcome to the show. I appreciate you coming on Agora the Podcast.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to come on. Do you want me to just tell the audience about myself?
Yeah, if you would, what's your deal? How long have you been an anarchist? you know, how'd you get to the where you are?
I've been an anarchist since I was like 18. So like 6 years. Before that, I first encountered the word libertarian when I was like 15. I was in high school. I was in like honors history and AP government, and I was also the president of a student organization, Gay Straight Alliance, that was basically just trying to promote anti-bullying stuff. And my teacher for the history and government class was also like the student sponsor of that organization. So I was just talking to him about political stuff. And I said that like I like a lot of the Democrat positions on things. I didn't know anything about economics at the time or like economic issues. But I said that I didn't like their position on guns, that I disagreed with that. And he was a libertarian, so he was like, "Oh, you should check out the Libertarian Party." I looked into it, and I liked a lot of what I saw. I didn't get more into it until like 2016, with the Gary Johnson campaign. I really liked, and yeah, so tried to get involved with like the local Libertarian Party, and like I contacted like a candidate that I knew. And I started talking to him, and he was telling me about like that he'd recently like discovered anarcho-capitalists, and was telling me about the non-aggression principle, and I was like, you know what, that all makes a lot of sense. So I basically just decided I was an anarchist then, and I've done activism with like different anarchist groups and libertarian groups for pretty much 6 years. Just basically as soon as I could, like as soon as I could get out on my own and do stuff. I would say like ideologically, how I come to this is I grew up in like a really dysfunctional family, so I saw firsthand how ineffective like CPS and social services were, and that's what kind of gave me the perspective of like questioning the government and like wanting to think of better ways to do things.
What specifically were you interested? Like, what ideals did you share with, say, the Democratic Party previous to your coming to anarchism?
I would just say they were the few people that I heard talking about drug decriminalization at all, like sort of the fringes there. Like Bernie Sanders would talk about it. Younger Democrats would talk about it. Then they were also generally at the time they were more anti-war, like it because they were opposing the Bush administration, like that. Like when I first started like looking at political things, I started looking at political things really young. It was when the Bush administration was still a thing. Um, Now they're like, I mean, we've seen like the Obama administration and what happened then, and that was another thing. Seeing like that the Obama administration was like supposed to be like this kind of younger like progressive bent of the Democrat Party, and then they didn't like codify gay marriage. They just had the Supreme Court do it. So now it's still up to the Supreme Court. I think. Well, actually, they I think they did a thing recently that codified it. But then like Obama was a complete warmonger. That was another thing that basically as soon as I figured out that there was a different option than Democrats or Republicans, I was ready to go for it, because like Obama failed on a lot of his campaign promises. But yeah, mostly just like social issues, because like I said, I didn't know much about economic issues.
The audience has heard me say this many times, but I'm going to repeat it here because I'm a very bitter old man. But I was protesting Bush at the time, and I had a lot of sort of leftist and liberal friends and allies. And I felt very betrayed once Obama came into office and essentially continued and escalated all of Bush's foreign policy. And I was young and naive, and I expected people to be consistently anti-war. There was a huge anti-war movement under Bush, and I thought it would continue naively under Obama. And in some ways, it really proved to me that a lot of these people were not necessarily allies. They were just, anti-Bush, which there's a lot of good reasons to be anti-Bush. But, essentially Obama to me was just like Reagan light, So it was that was a sea change in the way I thought about things as a young man. In a lot of ways. Was that a similar situation for you?
Yeah, I would say like when I was like, basically when I was in my teens and started like looking at stuff online, not just like seeing it in the news. I would find like the data on like Obama's work activities, and then like I encountered a bunch of sketchy stuff about Hillary Clinton, and she was like about the Clintons, and it was obvious that like Hillary was being set up to be like the next Democrat nominee, so that was another thing that was, it was like, yeah, we need better options. And like I looked at other campaigns in the Democrat Party at the time, but but yeah, a lot of them were just more establishment. And then once I started learning about economic things, and then again there was always like the gun issue. Um, yeah,
Yeah, I
basically
think
it was just a combination of really bad candidates, and like no one really ever rose up to be like the anti-war candidate again after like once Bush was out of office. That wasn't an issue people talked about anymore, really.
Yeah, there was that one guy, but other than Ron Paul, which really didn't go anywhere. I mean, actually, it's the genesis of a lot of things. But I think another thought that I come to that kind of just bolsters what we've always talked about the Obama. And this is a generational thing. Obviously, you're talking about people that kind of experienced this around kind of formative years, the Obama thing. Occupy, Ron Paul, all that stuff happened in like very formative times for all of us, even if our ages are a little bit different. Um, and I just think that the Bush years were so formative for me in my like high school and college, like undergrad kind of age years. But the election of Obama and the ensuing 2 terms of that, we're kind of, I think, living in this is the original part of that because we've talked about this ad nauseum on the podcast, but I think we're living really in the downstream effects of like Obama at this point. I guess for a while we were living in the downstream. I mean, we were living very much in the downstream effects of the 8 years of W, and we're really now living in like the downstream, like all the crazy political stuff that's happening now, both in like the mainstream, excuse me, in the mainstream and in the like radical and in extremists and dissident circles and everything you might call it, the mainstream, the pseudo mainstream, everything. Like, I think a lot of this really is downstream. And I don't know. I mean, Trump was just 4 years of Trump. That was just like a sideshow. But I think we're still really in the downstream effects of 8 years of Obama and like that rallying around Obama and the disappointment and the various ways that people went and splintered off from that, and then the things with Bernie and the things with Hillary versus Trump. I mean, I think we're going to be downstream of that. We're going to be operating off of that for a long time.
I would say to some extent, I agree. I think that the Trump candidacy really like made things weird because like it kind of activated this strain of Republicans that is just completely different from anything we've seen over there before. And now the
Oop, you died out. Are you there? Sec,
I'm here.
are you there?
I'm
Okay,
here.
I'll make sure.
so like
I'm
we're
not.
not gonna like a little bit. I mean,
You
just because
just cut
like
out
they
for
have to
like.
appeal to the Trump base now.
You just cut out for like 20 seconds. Would you mind repeating that? And I'll just splice it together.
Oh, okay. Basically, I was saying like the Trump like candidacy and then presidency activated like this whole section of people that the GOP now has to like appeal to, and so we're not going to get those like Ron Paul, Justin Amash, Gary Johnson types from the GOP anymore. Like we're not going to get a candidate like that from them, and I think that's something that's very different.
Yeah, and I want to bounce this off to you because I think this also has its parallel in libertarian circles, in like party or movement libertarian circles. While that's true, and I sort of agree with that, I also think that, yes, we're not going to have those guys, but we're also not going to have like the Republican Party is not going to be represented by the Bush and Cheney and Condoleezza Rice and those crowds, and even like the McConnell and all those really just fat cat establishment, big.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be populist as fuck. It's gonna be populist and authoritarian.
And it was going to happen, just like with the Libertarian Party. I think it's when there's an imbalance and there's demand, like just in the atmosphere for change, you don't necessarily know where that change is going to go. It's kind of a spontaneous order, so to speak. But yeah, I think that I would like to have. I'm not saying I can have an effect, but maybe collectively there should be some sort of attempt to have an effect on where kind of populism grows broadly, not connected with the two parties, but broadly. And when I say populism, I just mean popular, non-elite, non-institutional politics. I mean, look at left populism. It's after Bernie, and then Bernie failed one and Bernie failed two. I mean, I want to say, oh, I'm sorry, you.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I see with Republicans, there's kind of this like new theocratic wave, just new like social conservatism wave. So that's being interesting. Yeah. The both mainstream parties are always going to be like a complete fucking mess. And then I mean the Libertarian Party's a mess, but with slightly better starting principles.
This is why I hate party politics entirely.
Yeah, we're on an anarchist podcast talking about party politics. Can we have other topics?
There's no rules. We can talk about anything.
Well, I will say like one thing that might be an interesting side effect of some of these sea changes in mainstream politics, of which I include the Libertarian Party in that. You mentioned guns several times and being interested in guns. I've never seen more interest in guns amongst, let's say, left circles and
I'm encouraging them.
Yes, and marginalized communities and women are all arming themselves because of, I would say, probably because of the sort of theocratic impulse within certain parties, and also there being no hope in like the LP or the Democratic Party either. So I think you're seeing a lot of people take things into their own hands, which I think is overall in the long term a good thing, even if it's coming from sort of negative influences. What do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I feel like this is another thing that like kind of made me think completely outside the box. In 2015, when there was like the police brutality protests, then I mean the media just like all like both forms of mainstream media, be it Fox News or like the more liberal leaning ones, all they did was show rioting. They didn't show any of like what people were actually upset about, like people talking, people doing peaceful protests. And then I would go home and look on like internet media, and it would just be a completely different thing. Like you would see like a more holistic picture of what was actually going on up there. And like my husband was actually in Baltimore at the time and took part in the protest, and he like backs up kind of what I observed, that like it was mostly peaceful protests, but the media would just run the same 5 clips of like one or two violent things happening or like one really bad night. And yeah, that but observing that, like when that all happened, like the Freddie Gray stuff, like broke my perspective on like mainstream media. And then like all this happened again in 2020, and I feel like that was a lot of people's awakening, that like the police are not going to help us, they're not going to come save us, we have to take self-defense into our own hands. And I feel like that's one big factor in like the kind of like gun culture 2.0 that's cropping up.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
I'll take that as a win
Is like
overall.
we saw in 2020 that like police have failed.
Yeah,
yeah. I mean,
exactly.
it's very weird. It's not connected necessarily to a certain political persuasion. I think that it's. I'm glad that it's persisting, and it's persisting widely. Gun rights, gun availability, gun ownership has never been more broad, more diverse, more free, and more unencumbered, regardless of whatever law is being passed or ATF. Just like that's great. If you're one of those people, then that cares about that and is going to try to do something about it. I do care about it, but by all means, like absolutely. But yeah, you walk into a gun store and like that's not a gun store 30, 40 years ago. That's not a gun store 120. Like, dude, I think we're in a great place, and you would never have thought necessarily that that's the one thing that we're most optimistic on. And I'm glad, and I'm really glad to see, not for necessarily ideological association reasons, but I'm really, really glad to see politically, demographically diverse gun ownership. Um, I just like that. I don't like to see things just like one of my big beefs with electoral politics, besides obviously like the basic principle based ones, is that so much of it tends to track with just like demographic identifiers. Well, gun ownership too was tracking with demographic identifiers, and it doesn't bode well when it becomes a partisan issue. So I just like to see it. It's just fun to see like families and immigrants and all sorts of people enjoy this thing that I also really like, and that will certainly help it persist in a world where it's not guaranteed to persist because it doesn't persist in any other similar country with similar standards of living, if in any country at all. So I'm altogether optimistic on gun rights. I think that's one of the few things. I don't know if you would agree, if both of you would agree, but that's one of the few things I'm actually optimistic on.
Yeah, I think if like people can genuinely convey to the populace that like violent crime is way down, that well, basically, like if you look at a chart of the past like few decades, violent crime is way down. So we don't really have a crime problem. So I think like the other factors that we've mentioned, like if we can really convey that there's not as much of a crime problem as politicians want people to think, I think we really can see a resurgence of gun rights in this country. I don't know about other countries; they're probably fucked, but in America, yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think, I mean, one of the reasons I have guns is to protect myself from violent crime, and certainly up on the micro level. But I think that that's a valid reason. I think that's a valid reason. I think that libertarian principles, regardless of whether you want to be some kind of like self-defense fanatic, and I don't encourage anyone to seek out that kind of motivation for owning guns. But I think at the same time the it's very powerful preserving the idea that there is an individual right or ability to defend oneself, because that's just unheard of in most other countries. It's just not compatible with the rule of law as understood in other countries. And I think, you know with all the criticisms I have about this country, there are certain factors that we're, whether we like it or not, and I guess I do kind of like it. This is the place where the spark of liberty, if it's going to last, even if it's something as simple as gun rights. Yeah, I'm gonna hold on to my guns. You can't come from my guns. You can take it from my cold dead hand. But I mean, honestly, that's just unheard of in almost any other part of the world, and seen it, and it is incompatible with the rule of law, and it's not, at least in most of this country, not seen incompatible with the rule of law. And all things considered, like, we might have our own theories, but we certainly believe in the rule of law in a libertarian sense.
I don't, but I sort of agree.
Yeah, I don't like laws.
That's a terminological difference, of course, but it's definitely a terminological difference. No, I think that
You mean like in the sense of like customs and
natural? No. It could be natural law. It could be
sure. Okay. Yeah.
It could be bottom up. It could be No, I mean the rule of law versus the rule of man. In other words, instead of rulership.
Mm. Yeah. Emergent order.
I'm one of those guys. I listen to those radical libertarians.
You've been listening to a lot of radical liberals, yeah.
Not in the class, like not the classical type either, but no. But terminology aside, I do think that we're uniquely positioned. We're in a unique place where, okay, so there's obviously freedom rankings that show we're not doing so great on a lot of things, including things that we care deeply about, like economic freedom and ability, entrepreneurship, and be able to own your own business. But the spark, there's a cultural affinity to some of these ideas, and we can't let that go away. And we can't let, especially rising populism of right, left, or upside or down, do that, because all of them seem pretty hostile to liberty when you look at it.
So, just to change it up a little bit, because I don't want to run out of time, but something I've been asking, and Penguin, I agree with mostly with what you said. We have to be what do we call it? The secret other thing, the secret third thing. I don't know, but I wish third position fascists had never used the term third positionist, because I would like to use that term, but that means something else than what I would like to use it for. But yeah, it's a weird thing.
Fourth position.
No, we just call it the secret other thing.
I don't want to be the last place.
Right, I don't want to be last placed either. But yeah, no, we're the secret other thing. Anyway, moving on though. Something I've been asking every woman that's come on in this series so far is, it's a common perception that there are no women anarchists, and this gets thrown about a lot, but doesn't actually it is not relatable to my personal experience. So do you have any thoughts on to why there is that perception in the first place? And why is that? Why do you think?
I don't know. I would love to get some demographic data on it. Yeah, I don't really know why there's that perception in the first place. Maybe because political stuff in general used to be by law restricted to just men, and maybe to this day there's still some of that influence. So yeah, but when I like talk to people, when I like talk to a lot of like anarchists and libertarians, like it seems like, there's some bias, but like that's kind of like, if you look at every political group, there's some like there's just more men active in it than women. But like if you look historically, I mean, Emma Goldman is a pretty popular anarchist thinker who was a woman, and then like Ayn Rand is not an anarchist, but she's somewhat in the libertarian vein of thought, and I'd say there's definitely a lot of women that are into anarchism or libertarianism. I don't really know what it is, but
I
yeah,
I
we're
don't
out
think it's
here.
necessarily. Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily like ideological. At all. As a matter of fact, I think it's, if anything, there's less of a proclivity, in my opinion, for it to be kind of a man's game, and maybe you see that less so with some of the party institutional politics. But when you're talking about something, especially the kind of stuff that we talk about, that's not non, very much non-institutional, and I don't know if you want to call it populist or not. That's a big terminological debate in my head. But like, um, out here in the real world, when we're talking about actually doing things and not like going to political meetings. Yes, you're filtering out a lot of women when you're talking about going to political meetings, which I don't think Sec or I do for the most part. We do other things, and I think politics can intersect with those things, and that's why we've had. I think we've had so much success with the Women of Anarchism series, because we're not pulling people out of you know a party convention or meetups or something like that. We're pulling people out from like what they actually do, because I mean, it might sound like a meme, but like everything we do is political, and we talk about like all facets of life. So yeah, I think we've already firmly debunked, thanks to our wonderful women guests, like firmly debunked the idea that women aren't attracted to these ideas or don't live the life. So yeah, speaking of living the life, like how does your day to day lifestyle actually reflect a libertarian anarchist philosophy?
Well, I mean, my main hobby is doing stuff, um, in like the Libertarian Party or just like activism stuff. So, I spend a lot of time advocating for it. I would say like in my day-to-day life, I'm pretty passionate about like peaceful parenting. And I see that as like an expression of libertarian values. And I would say mostly just like acting on that is the main way that I act on it. Um, yeah, I mean, I own land. I have a like homestead, but I don't.
But it's all
It's
political.
kind of hard
It really
to
is.
live that radically when you have to pay taxes on it and you have to obey zoning laws. Like homesteading is the
No,
hardest thing to do, like without the government. But
and
I
you're
would
so
say
fortunate to be able
parenting
to
is
do
like
that.
the main way I get to act on my ideas.
Yeah, we're definitely not here like purists to a fault, and we never will be. And I think you play the cards that you're dealt, and I think you're able to we're able to live our ideals whenever we interact with others in a peaceful and non-coercive manner, of course. And everything else is kind of just how we can structure our lifestyle to get us disentangled from those institutions that we find either coercive or generally distasteful. So I think for first step, for a lot of people, and like we say, it's not for everyone. Get that land, do as much as you can, become as self sufficient as you can. I think it's a great lifestyle to kind of promote those ideas. So, good on you for being able to do that. Do you have chickens by chance?
I have a bunch of chickens and I have some ducks.
Oh man, the ducks. Yeah, we learned all about. I learned all about ducks when we
They're
had Gonzo on.
ducks are incredibly messy.
Yeah,
Very
I'll
annoying to
never
have
own ducks
at the
again.
brooding stage.
Yeah, they're a giant mess.
The
I'll never
brooding
own ducks
stage
again.
sucks.
Mm-hmm.
Like here's the thing, they like you get them and they're really cute for a couple days, and then you
Yeah,
realize, why did I invite this horrible thing into my house. I mean, I hate geese just because they're geese, but ducks, I'm like, wait, so this is another layer I can hate geese, because raising geese is basically the same as ducks. They're probably fucking messy too. I'd never invite a goose into my home, but ducks are so messy.
Ducks seem really cool when I see them from time to time, but it's good to know you don't want ducks living with you. I'm totally turned off from that. But yeah, chicken's very hot right now. I would love to. I would love to do some urban chickenry or whatever. I would love to do some of that. And I've actually encountered people, like I live in my hometown. I've always lived here, and I encountered somebody like basically the next neighborhood over from where I grew up. And she sure has some chickens, and you definitely could have had some chickens back in the day over there. But right now, that's like the middle of the city. Pretty awesome. So it's something you can definitely do in different different environments. But yeah, we're big fans of homesteading, owning land, all of that stuff.
Let me run a theory by you, and this is might be just the most obvious thing, and I might be wrong, but I think it comes down to I don't know. Men can often be very loud in these spaces and often not very welcoming. And I'm trying to be very nice here, but I've put it another way another time. But I'm trying to be nicer this time, and maybe not very welcoming, we'll say. I know several women who have stated this exactly. And so the women kind of get crowded out and just go do it rather than you seeing them in these spaces. And maybe this is what accounts for the perception that there's not as many women anarchists. And also you miss Voltairine de Cleyre. If you have not heard of her, she's probably my favorite anarchist ever. Are you familiar?
I had seen some quotes from her. That name doesn't really the name doesn't convey male or female to me because I don't speak whatever language it's from. So I didn't know. I hadn't looked into her.
So
I didn't know she was a woman.
Yeah, that's a woman. She's pretty awesome. She was also a poet and friends with Emma Goldman. So she was what they call the in the group what they call the Boston anarchists, the early American individualist anarchists. She's right in that sort of school, late 1800s. And she is fucking awesome. She's probably one of my favorite anarchists of all time. But she did a lot of great great writing, but she was also a poet. And her poetry is very good. But her non-poetry almost reads like poetry just because, that's kind of how she writes. So her writing's really awesome. And it's very approachable and easy to read. I really like it a lot. So I would if you're not familiar, I would highly recommend checking her out. But to my first question, do you think that...
Yeah, I've seen a lot of good quotes, and I've meant to look into...
Yeah, I would recommend. Yeah, I think you would dig her. I recommend her to everybody who's not familiar. But to my original question, do you think it's the reason for this perception is that women just get crowded out of these spaces or feel uncomfortable in some way, and then go do their own thing, like you just go do your peaceful parenting and your homestead, and you don't get involved in spaces that you don't feel welcome? Do you think there's any truth to that?
Maybe. I don't know. I'm fairly autistic, so I don't read social cues. So if I'm unwelcome somewhere, I usually don't know. Yeah. So I've always been fine in political spaces, but I understand why other women might be uncomfortable. I do see a lot of women activists in the peaceful parenting and self-directed learning advocacy spaces. if you get that, it's so easy for you to like get anarchism, because like you're already at like the most radical extreme of like self-ownership thought. I even find it hard to like talk to like there are anarchists and libertarians who just don't get that like children also have rights. So like I feel like the people that get peaceful parenting and like get self-directed learning and are advocates for that, like they would get anarchism in like a few, like very quickly if they were exposed to the ideas. So if those people aren't low-key libertarian or anarchist already, it would be very easy for them to understand it.
Yeah, something that my lady and I came to realize, because we unschool and we both do, we peaceful parenting and that, and it's a lot more responsibility. It would be in a lot of situations, you can kind of sit them down and just talk to them and what have you, but there's certain times where it would be far easier just to put, yell and say, because I said so, and et cetera, and be very angry, rather than trying to get them, to redirect them to something else, or try to explain that to them why we can't do this or that. So it takes a little bit more effort on the part of the parent, which can be straining at times. But overall, I guess the point I'm making is you sort of come to the realization that it's a lot more. It is a microcosm for anarchism, because anarchism is going to mean far more self-responsibility, and in a lot of different ways, but it'll be worth it in a sense. So that's something my lady and I have been talking about here recently. It would be just easier to just yell and do what I told you to do, and send them, spank them or whatever that thing, and just in a very authoritarian manner, and the boom, problem solved. But you're not looking at the bigger picture by doing that. Yes, it would be easier in this instance, but you're raising a much different human in the long term. So taking a little bit more effort makes it a much better situation overall for them, and for yourself in the long term, and for society as a whole. So that, to me, you're absolutely correct in that peaceful parenting and child rearing and that sort of thing is a microcosm for anarchic relationships, in that sometimes it's going to take more effort. And I think a lot of people are just not, I don't know, I've run across a lot of people that are not ready for an anarchist society for that reason. Do you agree? What are your thoughts on that?
You cut out like right at the beginning.
Oh no.
So can
Okay.
you just restate the question really?
The short
quickly?
version is
I got
is
most of it.
okay. We lost Penguin again. The short version is that yes, peaceful parenting is a microcosm for anarchist relations, and possibly an anarchist society. But this also means, like, just like peaceful parenting, it sometimes requires a bit more effort on the part of the parent than, say, a parent that would be rather authoritarian and violent, and just say, do as I say because I said, and if you don't, I will hit you. That's actually the easy way out. So it takes a little bit more effort and creativity on your own part as a peaceful parent to raise your child in a nonviolent manner. And that, to me, is a microcosm for anarchist relations, in the sense that anarchism will also require a lot more sort of creativity and self responsibility to make things work without violence. Sometimes it will be way easier to make things work without violence, or I'm sorry, aggressive violence. But sometimes it's going to be harder for us. We're going to have to figure out creative alternatives, right? Do you see this? Do see this relationship? I mean, I know you do, but I'm kind of just taking it in another direction here.
Yeah, no, I agree. I also think that like promoting peaceful parenting is an essential step to eventually getting to a much more free society. Because I feel like the more, like, if someone is raised in peace and without coercion and without an unnecessary hierarchy, they are less likely to look to violence and unnecessary hierarchies to solve their problems when they're older, because they've learned more how to solve problems without violence, without coercion. Um, yeah, so I feel like people who are peacefully parented are more natural anarchists or libertarians. One of someone that you should look into interviewing is Avens O'Brien. She's a second generation anarchist. Well, she might be second generation libertarian. She's definitely like an anarchist. But she was fully like peacefully parented and unschooled. So she's someone who's very interesting to talk to about all that stuff, because she, like, her life has been these theories like in practice, if that makes sense.
So
She also like runs uh business, so like she's like completely like lived the theory.
right on. Can you spell her name for me?
Avens, and then the last name is O'Brien. I don't know if it's with
Okay.
an E or an A. I can't think off the top of my
close
head,
enough.
but I could send you her name on Twitter. And
Yeah, if you could put me in contact if you're friends with
but
her,
yeah,
that'd be awesome. Cool. Yeah, my my kids will be third generation. Well, we're not raising them to be ideological anarchists, but my parents were anarchists as well, even though I still went to public school. But unschooling was less of a thing then in the 80s. So, um, but where was I going with that? Yeah, I would
I
definitely share that
believe
with them.
John Holt is the father of the modern unschooling movement, and his work was about like the 70s. So really, it didn't really catch on until later.
That's super early, actually. That's crazy. I can't imagine doing this kind of thing or having these ideas without the internet. I mean, I think about that about a lot of things historically, but like, can you imagine? But yeah, I think for that reason, I mean, the thing that we're using right now, the internet, opens up a lot more possibilities for us, and I think really lets us do things where we are doing things individually and on an individualist basis, but we're actually not relying solely on ourselves because we have this like connection. It's pretty mind blowing when you think about it. But you know, I think that's really important because that's what we need, a sense of community. And I think, some of the practical things community provides, certainly not everything, uh, by far not everything, but I think the internet can provide that, provide for us a way to have like a lot of support and just kind of answer questions, um, that would be, you know, advice that would be really hard to get without this tool that's like available to us at all times. So, um, I'm really able that glad that facilitates this podcast and facilitates us kind of not relying on these kind of large institutions. So, what's a bigger and more like dinosaur of an institution than public schools, where like they send 5,000 kids to like this one central location, all locked in and behind razor wire, to all be taught according to the state curriculum in the state, but also like, the state itself. So I think the future bodes well. Another optimistic point. I think the future bodes well for homeschooling, unschooling, and all these, and just alternative education models in general. And I know that's something that a lot of our listeners and a lot of the women anarchists in the audience really care about. So do you what's your content? Actually, since I'm not familiar with it, what is actually your content? Do you release your content in video or podcast form on peaceful parenting?
Mostly, I just make posts and I argue with people, and like, I used to do Facebook a lot more, but I just kind of don't use it because it's so, like, it's just hard to navigate their, like, banning algorithm, and, like, you don't reach as many people as you do on Twitter. So yeah, I've basically just been arguing with people for years. I don't really make videos. I've considered getting into streaming. I've dabbled in TikTok some. I need to get back into it. But yeah, I mostly just like argue with people and make memes.
Oh,
And like I will
TikTok.
post like long. I'll post like short things. I'll post like longer things. Yeah. Honestly, I got banned from Facebook in like 2020, like permabanned, and I have like a newer account. But I'm mad I lost like all my like writing from then. There was some stuff that I'd saved to like copy and paste in debates, but other than that, like I lost a lot of stuff.
One last question.
So that's one thing that kind of like
good.
disincentivizes me to post there.
Yeah, I haven't been on Facebook in a long time.
Man, Facebook. Wow.
Yeah.
It's been a while, and I wouldn't have anybody to post any of these ideas to if I went back on and went back to my friends list from like 2014. But yeah, no, I apparently it's got that network effect. It can get you out there, and especially if you're trying to debate, I can imagine.
Yeah, I can't debate on the internet anymore. It just fucking destroys my soul. And raises my blood pressure. One last question, and then at least I got a skedaddle. What do you have? Do you think you have a possibly a unique perspective on anarchism as a woman?
No, not really. Yeah, I think there's a bunch of things that make my perspective unique, but I don't think like being a woman is connected to it.
Fair enough. What is unique about your perspective?
I know that like being autistic makes me think like in a way that's completely like outside of the box of how people would normally think about stuff. So I'm like I come up with like angles and arguments for things that other people don't think of. I feel like I'm more able to detach my like feelings on a subject from something. So that kind of enables me to like make arguments better. And like examine issues without like more objectively. Yeah.
Well, okay, so if we're talking about things like that, how much do you think that emotion and empathy affects your attraction to anarchism? Let me give you an example of what I mean. For me personally, I do like a good, logical reasoning as to why I want to do things a certain way, but many times these are justifications for like a feeling. Like I don't want to see people go without a home or go hungry. I don't want to see kids starving. I don't want to see kids getting blown up in my name all over the planet. You see where I'm going with this? But then I have a logical reasoning.
I agree.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
No, I agree. Like a lot of the reason I come to this and why I'm so passionate about it is because of like I feel a lot of empathy for people. I'm just saying like if I'm able to look at people's arguments without reacting to them very heavily, and I'm able to examine issues. For example, like abolishing the death penalty is something that like people get very emotional about it because there are very horrific crimes. But I've been able to like look at it more like it's just in a more practical sense. Like, yes, there are these crimes that are horrific that we want to stop, but we also have like all of these cases of people rot in jail for decades, convicted on the same crimes, and then it turns out that they were innocent. you know. So if we make the if we expand the death penalty more, if we like do it faster, we might kill innocent people. Like back in the days of lynchings, a lot of innocent people died on false accusations.
Yeah, not a fan of the vigilante justice. But just I guess to go back to something I said. Are you optimistic? So we've kind of narrowed down what's your wheelhouse, and it was one of those things that I think that I'm optimistic on. Like a lot of things we talk about on the podcast. So the peaceful parenting, the alternative schooling, and I mean broadly, like all the different kinds of alternatives to like legacy schooling, so to speak. I need to stop saying traditional for so much things, but like legacy schooling institutions or whatever, and the education. Are you as optimistic as I am on that kind of thing? Since that's kind of your area of focus.
Oh yeah, I'm more optimistic about like I'm like incredibly optimistic when it comes to like peaceful parenting and youth rights stuff because I see that awakening catching on very quickly and yeah, I that's a front that I'm very optimistic on.
Sorry, I had to step out for half a second. But I have to wrap up here. You guys want to wrap up
Yeah,
here
I think
too,
I
or
kind of have to wrap it on up myself. I think it's been a great discussion, though.
yeah, this is awesome.
Yeah, it's right up the alley of the Women in Anarchism series. I think we are doing. I think we're doing a service, I guess, just being the platform. It's really all our guests, but we're being the platform to kind of bring voices to the table that may not have be that into podcasting, for example. That's another thing that I think a lot of guys like to do. They did it's just a kind of a male deal, the podcast and everything. And I get told that we're not like one of those bad, annoying podcasts.
A
So
lot of dude
hopefully
bros.
people don't find
Yeah.
that. Yes. So yeah, thank you for coming on, sharing your perspective in what you do, your activism and everything. Really appreciate your appearance here.
Yeah, Rachel, thanks for coming on. I value your perspective here. Do you want to plug anything before you go or anything like that?
Yeah, yeah, follow my TikTok because I will eventually get back into creating content on that, and it's very easy to get stuff in front of a lot of people on there. And then Twitter, same deal, very easy to get stuff in front of a lot of people. I've had several memes get like over 10,000 likes, and it's crazy. I'm like, why do this many people should not be seeing what I say? But um.
What's your
It's just
handles on
crazy
both
to
of
me
those?
that like that many people were like, good idea. So it's libertarian Neko, like a cat, like Neko and like a cat girl. It was just something funny I came up with. I used
Yeah.
to wear cat ears on podcasts and like videos more. So it's LIBERATIANNEKO. Libertarian Neko. That's me on Twitter and TikTok.
Right on.
And
Well,
yeah,
anything else?
that's all I guess I have to plug.
Okay, cool. Well, thanks
Oh,
again for coming on.
and if you're into libertarian,
Go ahead.
if you're into Libertarian Party stuff, check out the Liberation Caucus and the Classical Liberal Caucus. Because I don't agree with the CLC as much, but the Liberation Caucus is like my I founded it, so but those are both um things to check out in the Libertarian Party if you're into
You know
all
what?
that stuff. I know this is an anarchist podcast, not a lot of party people, but
You know what's funny is I was in talks with. Were you running the Liberation Caucus Twitter?
yes.
I think. Oh, okay. So we were supposed to have you on a while back, and then it got lost in the shuffle.
Yeah.
For the Liberation Caucus.
I remember that.
Okay. Yeah. I remember that. We're not super into
okay.
like party politics, but I just don't care. It's just it's not that we hate that. Do it if you want, you know what I mean? But it's just not our thing specifically, But we have had a few different caucuses on from the LP. Like we had Drew Cook from the Sober Caucus on, and then who else did we have? We had somebody else, didn't we? Anyway, we've had a few.
I remember. Yeah, I think it's kind of annoying when people are in your face and obnoxious about the quote unquote anarchist, or I mean, not anarchist, but in your face and obnoxious about being involved with the Libertarian Party or with some sort of political or organization. Like, come on, man, I just obviously there's a place for everything. There's a place for organizing. I think a lot of people have been involved with the party over the years that don't understand what the point of it was. But that being said, like, by all means, join whatever group you want, except for the Republicans or Democrats or the cops or whatever. But yeah, the Chamber of Commerce. But within reason. Yeah, that's awesome. Anybody in your caucus or any caucus, really, are welcome to come on the podcast. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, we'll have to have you on again and talk about that. That'd be a good episode. But
okay.
All right. Well, again, thanks for coming on, and we'll everybody listening be excellent to each other, and we'll see you all next time.
Have a good night.
Ciao.
Peace.